Cody Wilson was born in Little Rock, Arkansas. He studies law at the University of Texas School of Law in Austin. He is a student of Frederick Bastiat, John Locke, Austrian economist Hans Hermann Hoppe, and Anthony de Jesse, and in all things works toward the realization of a private law society. He has helped to develop the Wiki Weapon, which utilizes current technology to manufacture working firearms, wait for it, by printing them. Cody Wilson, welcome to the Global Freedom Report. Cody, are you there?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Brent.
Yes,
pleasure. I'm here. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. I tell you, when I first read about this, I was fascinated, and definitely want to talk to you about this technological marvel. But my first question: you are a law student. Are you going into a particular specialty?
No, not at the moment. I'm in first year, round 2 or something. I'm just basic courses. I'm just trying to teach myself everything about commerce and business, and basic rules of the road.
Well, now, how do you reconcile the study of law in America with your self-declaration? You're a student of such freedom lovers and free thinkers as Frederick Bastiat, John Locke, and Hans Hermann Hoppe.
Yeah, easily, actually. I consider it kind of intellectual boot camp. I knew I couldn't begin my ministry, if you will, until I had some of this education because, the enemy works in D.C. I have to know what my enemy will do.
Well, now let me tell you just a little story here. Several years ago, I was at a trade show in the Dallas area in Texas, and a gentleman came from Montana. I was speaking at the trade show, and the gentleman came from Montana because he wanted to hear me speak. And at one point, I was talking with him, and he was extremely extremely knowledgeable in common law, and he wanted to learn what was taught in statutory law. So he went to take a course, and he had to take a course as to how to pass the bar. So he was taking this course on how to pass the bar, and during the course, he kept asking questions from his common law framework. And ultimately, the tutor said, look, you're going to have to stop asking these questions. We will teach you a new way to think about the law. And that's when he quit the course, and he felt that he had learned enough. Do you find there to be any conflict between your philosophical beliefs and the strictures of your chosen field of study?
Oh, of course. Bruno Leone writes about this. So did early Milton Friedman. Legislation is separate from that common law idea of discovering the truths of law. These are separate political activities. One is interested in justice and divining what is a just outcome, and the other is simply interested in the craft. These are different activities, and it's sad that one has eclipsed the other.
So, how do you reconcile that? I mean, that you're in there, taking courses in law. Okay, but do you run into that at any time where your beliefs run into whatever the teacher is telling you or...
Oh, yeah, every day. I mean, I take a course called Professional Responsibility. You have to not laugh every time you think of that. They say, well, what is a profession? And then they make these excuses for what law, which is basically a monopolized barrier to entry program. The lawyers control access to the legal field, and they covered all this up with this dross and these explanations about, well, we have a duty to the public. Our monopoly is granted in the public's interest. And, of course, everything in economics, everything in this early common law idea of access to justice speaks against these ideas about barriers to entry. And I think you should be able to pick up a lawyer at the mall. Barriers to entry only serve to increase legal fees, to decrease access to justice, and basically to ensure that there's this parasitic class, that kind of guides you across the jurisdiction.
Do you find yourself to be like an outsider among your fellow students? Are they all inculcated into the system, and you're this one clear-thinking person, or something like that?
In my darker moments, I'm sure I see myself that way. But no, I get along just fine with everybody else, my peers. But you can see that if most people that go to law school are indoctrinated into the certain consensual ideas about. You're gonna tend to be liberal if you're going to a good American law school. That's just the thing. You want to accomplish things through the state. That's just that's the inertia. That's the momentum. It makes almost no sense to be who I am and be in law school, and that's what you've hit upon. But here I am.
Well, my wish for you is that you not get poisoned by, by the things that you are learning, but rather that you're able to use them to further the objectives of your own philosophies. That's my wish for you.
I would say so far that has been the case.
Andrew Napolitano, America's favorite judge, Judge Andrew Napolitano, has said to me that he calls it, and it's a version of what he calls Potomac fever. And Potomac fever is when you go to Washington and you want to do good, and you end up getting just poisoned by it's variations on a theme. All right, let's talk about the wiki weapon. How did you become involved with this remarkable outgrowth of digital technology?
I simply chose to be. A lot of people say, well, were you an engineer, or were you this, that? Well, no, not at all. We imagined it first, and the rest follow. All you have to do is say, well, I want to do this. And if you really want to do it, all the hows follow. So I basically conceived it with the help of a friend. We amassed all the talent, and we did all the research, and we became experts on the fly.
Who named it the wiki weapon?
That's still up for debate. Actually, I want to say it was a guy named Chris Hancock. We had a series of meetings. You can imagine them probably. they were like the Malta summits basically, and we were in the lobby of the Peabody Hotel in downtown Little Rock, and we knew at the time that we were onto something, and we were like, well, this is the heart of the old order. We are the revolutionaries, the heartworms of this old society, and we came up with that name there in those lobbies, in those decorated marbled halls. It happened in one of those conversations this summer. Defense Distributed came very quickly, very early, and we knew we just needed a name to encapsulate what this weapon system, what this idea was beyond just our project's name.
It is a great name, great name. Okay, according to my information, this is a working firearm that can be produced on a 3D printer. Is it so easy that anyone and everyone will make them? And if so, what dangers does it pose for society?
Well, dangers, one, for society as we know it, and then two, dangers for society. So I see a distinction to make, but there's two different ways of making these guns, because the plastic the plastic that we're using is so brittle, it's kind of a flimsy material. You can't really make a reliable gun with it. So you can either not put metal pieces into it, not put barrel inserts and other things, and have something very scary, something that we haven't tested yet, something we can't speak to its quality and durability. Basically what we're kind of calling a plastic zip gun. And if people, I don't think, especially in the United States, people will go to that as their platform of choice. It's really at this stage and this part of where the technology is more of a conceptual achievement. It's saying, well, basically we've arrived. We can now print guns. Now that we're waiting and anticipating this technology to improve, the materials to get better, and I think we'll have a hand in doing that as well, improving some of these materials. But I think the real dangers to society are mostly just you actually printing off and hurting yourself, because it's in this real shaky area between being usable and being totally dangerous.
But like anything in the digital world, once it's conceptualized, it fairly rapidly gets, the kinks get worked out, and then, once you have a working prototype, and then, it gets easier to make a new prototype that's even better, and within the next, I don't know if you remember, but when cell phones first came out, they cost an arm and a leg. Now, you can get a cell phone for next to nothing. Same thing with television, same thing with big screens, same thing with all of it. Right. I would imagine that the technology will very quickly work out the kinks. How soon do you think this technology would be available to the John Q. public?
Well, the technology of 3D printing is rapidly falling in price. That's kind of why this new manufacturing renaissance is happening right now, especially in the past few years. If you measure some of the industry metrics out there, if you look at some of these numbers, they're predicting by 2018 that 3D printing is going to be the fastest single growing industry in the world. There's so many companies starting up overnight, just selling printer technology. There's such demand and there's such excitement that it's exactly as you predicted. If it's only difficult to make a weapon, it's already done. All right, and if it's impossible, well, we'll just have to wait a little bit longer.
How effective will a printed weapon be?
I don't know what it depends on what you mean by effective. There's a lot of the kind of enemies of the project think that we're just these Second Amendment remedy types who are saying, oh, it'll be the arm of the revolution. Well, not in that literal way that they're stuck in thinking about. I don't think people are going to print guns out and get into the streets. But it's a different kind of revolution, a social and conceptual revolution, when everyone just simply knows that now guns are printable. You have like a mental sea change, I think. That's the real revolution.
Yeah.
The revolution of the mind.
Would it be effective as a defensive weapon, for example? If I printed out a gun, somebody's bursting into my house, and I shoot that person, will that stop them?
It depends on the round and how close you are and other things, right? Traditional things, but the guns we're designing, the different designs we have right now, we proposed 22 LR in the video, but we're actually looking at 38, 12 gauge and stuff. You're going to have to be close, and you're going to have to not miss, but it's just as lethal as anything else. If you can get a certain projectile moving at a certain speed, that can kill a human being, if that's what you mean in terms of effectiveness.
Yeah, well, at least it's a defensive weapon. Yeah, that's, if I'm going to have a firearm for self-defense, I want it to be able to, to incapacitate somebody who's attacking me.
A lot of people call it from early on, and they're right to do it. It's basically the plastic Liberator, which was this metal stamped gun that was developed in World War II as a kind of idea to just distribute over the occupied peoples of Europe. And it was a one-shot little 45, I think. And the idea, it's not the gun that wins the war, it's the gun that gets you another gun,
Well, there you go. What caliber bullet will the Wiki weapon use?
Well, right now our designs, in our main video, we proposed the ideal round of using 22 LR, but there's such tremendous pressure with that round. Right now, the three main contenders for candidate files are the 12 gauge, 38 special, and the 45 long cold. Those are in traditional rounds. But we're also looking at doing cut-down rounds or proprietary ammunition. Simply, we just want to have something that can work in the materials that are being used right now. So I don't know. It's still a creative process, and for reasons which we might get into, I'm still unable to test these things.
Would it conceivably, would it just be like a handgun, or would it conceivably be somewhere down the line rifles?
Yeah, I think, again, the materials are the limitation there. If you really could have some kind of ballistic plastic that could maintain rifling, I'm not sure what the chemistry would be like there, but then, why rifles wouldn't be off the table. But right now we're limited by the build envelope size in these 3D printers. We're limited by the material. So I know that no matter what we rifle, the rifling will be needed to strip out, by the heat and pressure of a bullet coming through. You're basically looking at little disposable one-use guns.
Okay, so like a one-shot deal or something. How about ballistics? Would a Wiki weapon, at least conceptually, give a standard reading on ballistics tests?
That's something I'm going to find out. We've got a deposition set up. I'm actually more interested in internal ballistics than external ballistics. But I believe there'd be ballistics, sure.
And if I shot somebody and they took the bullet and everything and put it through their testing, would they be able to
that's what you mean.
A specific gun, or the fact that this will be printed out? We've got 10 different printers, we got 10 different guns, so they all come out the same.
Yeah. I really think there will be minor differences, right, depending upon the kind of printer, perhaps the way the printer laid down its plastic and other things. But no, there's surely no way to. I mean, imagine if the same file copied 100 million times, right? Everyone printing the same big file. There'd be no practical way that I could foresee determining, who used the gun when. I'm not saying that feature per se, but I can see how that scares a lot of people.
Well, now, obviously, this is the obvious question to ask here, and I'm going to play devil's advocate. Okay, in this respect. The potential for chaos in the streets, everyone having these weapons and shooting one another with abandon. Do you foresee? Now, keep in mind, it's crazy out there. People are nuts. They're absolutely out of their minds, and they've been kind of trained to think so bizarrely. Do you foresee this technology? Keep in mind, once technology is created, it can't be uncreated. Do you foresee it as coming under attack by government thugs in the name of fighting terrorism?
Yes, I do. I do see that. And I got to say, I don't know how you had an idea. And if 3D printing can't be stopped and regulated as technology, I don't know how you stop effectively something like this. It must be sort of trying to stop file sharing of music, right? The government hates it. They're really trying in earnest to do something about it. But like, what can you really do if someone's determined to print a gun off a 3D printer? Now you're saying, are people going to be out on the street shooting each other? Well, the reason I know this won't happen is because all the liberal hysterics say exactly this. It's like they're debating the invention of the gun for the very first time. There's almost one gun for every person in America, and we're in the streets in full-on civil war. I don't think it's just because we're afraid that police get the ballistics measurements or the serial numbers on our guns. I think it's because we're actually capable of handling our own liberty. I like, though, making some of these people a little bit uncomfortable. I like that we're crashing their little party. I think they thought perhaps within the next 5 to 10 years they could get a hold of our guns, or they can get a hold of us through gun control laws, right, or using or leveraging some kind of tragedy in the future. This would really change things. And maybe not in an immediate way. Maybe they will have some kind of partial victories in the future. But you can imagine that as this technology improves, which it only must, right, the world will be a very different place than what these central planners and these progressives had imagined for themselves only, let's say, 6 months ago.
In truth, what I would envision is this as a massive black market, because what I believe will probably happen is before the technology can be perfected, the government will come in and it will start regulating all 3D printer outlets. Okay, I mean, you can't do anything without having BATF, scrutinizing your every move, because you might make a gun with a 3D printer. So if you're going to own a 3D printer, since you might make a gun, suddenly you become the subject of these agencies. So I would imagine that this would become like a favorite of the black market, because frankly, that's the only place that you're free of government control these days.
I don't know. I think you're right. Your instinct is right. The sovereigns of every nation will want to do something like that. But how effective is that really, especially in this global contractionary moment, the budget-busting times we live in? I don't think there is the regulatory power and ability to really regulate the technology. 3D printing is, even right now, perhaps bigger than you might imagine. There are do-it-yourself kits out there and everything. I do not think this technology, as a technology per se, can even be regulated. Okay, there might be I just blogged about a new data rights management patent that was given to a private corporation as a way of using the internet to check what kind of files you're printing on a 3D printer, not to get too far into the weeds. That might be a more realistic way of checking what people print, but there's no way to take a regulatory agency apply proscriptively its decision-making process to everybody's use of a 3D printer. No. I don't think it can happen.
I would hope you're right, but you see, I doubt the ability of the American Gestapo to get itself into the business of just about everybody there. Ginger Colbrin, who's a spokesman for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, spoke about this particular technology, and she said, that the ATF is always, people have always made firearms out of anything, pens, books, belt buckles, whatever, but they all require a certain amount of knowledge and skill, and she intimated that this won't require any knowledge or any skill, just push a button. Is that true?
Yes, that's the idea as well. We recognize that as a promise of this technology. That's what separates it from CNC milling. The non-expert can click print after downloading a gun file and have a gun, in some period of hours. That really changes things. And you also add the fact that 3D printing will be used for almost everything else in people's homes. It's much more likely in 10 years you'll have a 3D printer in your home than CNC mill. It's just like a desktop printer and desktop publishing, right? No one ever predicted they'd be doing publishing in their home, but then here we are. Almost all of us have desktop printers. I think something similar is going to happen with 3D printers.
How do people learn more about the wiki?
People can go to printablegun.com, they can go to defensedistributed.com and read about it. Just Google printable guns, right? We're in the news, and I think we'll be in the news in a couple of days. Again, we've been making progress. Keep trying to unmake our progress, which is interesting, but we're moving right along.
Please keep us informed as well. I'm very interested in what you're doing here. And hopefully you'll be there also on the legal end to make sure that they don't trip up on the legal end in the process. Cody Wilson has been my guest. The website is www.defensedistributed.com. and we'll have a link to that on the Global Freedom Report website as well. Cody, the best of fortune with this. I hope that it works real well, and thanks so much for joining us here on the Global Freedom Report.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure. Thank you.